You're listening to Bark and Wag's 15-Minute Vet Talk. Each week, your host, Polly Requa, interviews veterinarians and individuals in the pet industry from across the nation answering pet questions. Bark and Wag podcast is produced weekly for your enjoyment, and show notes can be found at barkandwag.com under the podcast tab. That's BARKNWAG.com. Please remember to subscribe to Bark and Wag 15-Minute Vet Talk.
Thank you for listening to Bark and Wag 15-Minute Vet Talk. Bark and Wag is dedicated to protecting our dogs through advocacy, education, and supporting like-minded dog lovers by selling custom pet products. Bark and Wag is excited to announce our new partnership with a Colorado hemp farm to produce a line of CBD products for your pets. Bark and Wag has CBD pet tincture available in 300, 750, 1200, and 2400 milligrams. Bark and Wag CBD is pet safe, no THC, it's made in the USA, and is CO2 extracted. Please check out Bark and Wag's website, barkandwag.com. That is BARK, to see our line of CBD and awesome merchandise. We love pooch ideas for podcasts and merchandise, so anytime send an email to Polly at barkandwag.com with your suggestions.
Welcome to Bark and Wag 15-Minute Vet Talk. I'm your host, Polly Requa. Today we're talking to Jessica from Hobnob in Denver. Hobnob specializes in overnight boarding, doggy daycare, and self-service bathing. Welcome, Jessica. Thanks for being back on the show.
Thank you.
So I wanted to have you back because summer's coming and sometimes you just can't travel with your pet. And I wanted to discuss, how do you find the perfect place to board your dog, and what should you look for, and what do you bring when you drop your dog off to board while you're on vacation?
So first thing you want to look for, I think in my personal opinion, is always finding a licensed and insured business to be dropping your dog off. Sometimes having like your neighbor or just a friend watching can be a little bit nerve-wracking because maybe they don't own dogs of their own, or maybe they've never watched your dog overnight before. Maybe it's just been like a potty break or just maybe a day trip for that instance. So looking for a place close to home would be perfect. If you take your dog to doggy daycare already, then ask if they offer overnight boarding or if they recommend someone that does offer overnight boarding, and maybe going to someone that you already feel comfortable with, or them recommending someone that they feel comfortable with. And then once you find that facility, my recommendation is always asking what they require for boarding, or what their schedule is as well. So how does their boarding work? Do they play with the other daycare dogs that are there for the day, or do they just stay in a kennel and just come out for potty breaks? And again, just kind of figuring out what works best for your dog personally.
And how does it work at Hobnob? Do they get access to the doggy daycare?
Yeah, so at our facility, all of the hotel dogs will be out playing with the daycare dogs every single day. The only time that they're up in their kennels is for feeding. There's a nap time in the middle of the day from noon to 2, just because it is a lot to be doing daycare multiple days in a row. I always tell customers it's kind of like doing cardio multiple days in a row, so you get tired after a little while. And then just sleeping overnight is the only time that they're in their kennel as well. Other than that, they're out playing with the regular daycare dogs. They get to do swimming during the morning if they sign up for that. Otherwise, there's kiddie pools outside in our play areas, so they can go jump in those if it gets too hot as well.
And what should you bring, like when you are boarding your dog, do you bring your dog bed, or is it better just to use the facilities?
So that is dependent on the facility. So we have cots that we put in each of our kennels. So you don't necessarily have to bring your own dog bed, although sometimes some dogs can be a little bit anxious being left, especially overnight. So to me, it does make it a little bit more comfortable for the dogs to have something that smells like home in their kennel. Kind of makes the transition or the overnight stay a little bit easier on the pups.
And what about food? If you run out of food, then you just supplement the food? That I always worry about that. Like all of a sudden there's not going to be enough food.
Right. Yeah. My recommendation is always bring more. Always plan on not being there on the day that you expect to be. That way, if you guys do need to stay an extra night, like let's say there's bad weather, your plane flight has been delayed, so now we need an extra bag of breakfast, then that's already there. Although at our facility, we do have a retail store up front, so we do have the ability to pull a bag of dog food that's either similar or hopefully the same as what you guys already have. And then that way we can just kind of add that to your bill and then just use that to supplement for the rest of the stay.
I really like the fact that the dogs play all day because, back a long time ago, I'm much older than you. You would drop your dog off at the kennel and they just sat in a kennel. So now they have activities and they're socializing and they're around people. So I think that that's really important.
I agree.
Well, thank you for being on the podcast and we look forward to having you back.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Bark and Wag's 15-Minute Vet Talk. If you like what you just heard, we hope you'll pass along our web address, www.barkandwag.com, to your friends and other pet owners. Have a pressing question for a veterinarian? Ask your question at barkandwag.com under the podcast tab. This has been a KFR production. Join us next time for another edition of Bark and Wag's 15-Minute Vet Talk.